Well, I mean, look, it depends on your definition of fast. We've seen USDC grow over 80% a year for multiple years straight. We saw in Q3, our most recently publicly reported quarter, we saw transaction volume in USDC grow 580% year on year. Across so many other metrics, the amount of USDC flow across blockchain networks also growing at huge growth rates. What's interesting for us, though, is this gets into the original question, which is when we think about this, really from inception, when we designed this in the first place, we think about general purpose, general architecture money for the internet. Fully reserved, very safe, fully reserved. Now we're getting prudential frameworks to provide for that safety in a digital cash instrument that can scale from a transaction that might be between one AI agent and another AI agent that needs to consume digital tokens for 25 cents, all the way up to a bond purchase that might be $1 billion bond purchase settled internationally, and everything in between. And so when I look at the use case proliferation that we're seeing, it's extraordinary. We are seeing use grow in cross-border trade settlement. We're seeing use grow in trade finance. We're seeing the biggest e-commerce platforms like Stripe and Shopify adding USDC payment acceptance in their own platforms. We're seeing the biggest remittance companies and neobanks adding USDC as a way to store value, as a savings vehicle, as a payment system capability. The biggest payments networks in the world, like Visa and MasterCard, now using USDC as an internal settlement infrastructure. The biggest asset issuers and asset managers like BlackRock and Apollo issuing private credit products on chain or other fund products on chain, where the primary way that you create and redeem these new securities is with things like USDC. And then obviously in peer-to-peer transactions, I think one of the things that I think people often mistake is there's a lot of USDC and stablecoin in general that comes in and out through these big aggregators like a Binance or a Coinbase or others, quote-unquote crypto exchanges. But what's interesting about these platforms is that, yes, people are using them for trading and investing, but they're also using them for savings. If you look at a platform like Binance with over 300 million users, 20% of their users are in Africa. Far higher penetration of users in Africa than the banking system in Africa. And people are using it primarily as a dollar substitution mechanism, as a way to store value, make peer-to-peer payments, et cetera. And so the use cases are growing in every sector of the economic system, and with the regulatory clarity, I think that's breaking out all around the world. We expect that to accelerate as well. Sure, I'd start with maybe some basic, which is when we got started working on this almost 13 years ago, the idea that got us very excited was that first that you could have kind of money as like a native data type on the internet. So you could have digital dollars, just like you have digital music or communications, like kind of basic building blocks, and that it would be programmable. And the programmability idea was through the advent or the proposal of the idea of smart contracts. And 12 years ago, 13 years ago, that wasn't a thing. Now we have very mature computing networks, these blockchain networks that are able to execute code. And what's powerful about it is that these smart contracts are, they're publicly verifiable. So that's really important when you're dealing with transactions amongst unknown counterparties, or, for example, when you're dealing with transactions between an AI agent and another AI agent. And so we now have kind of the computing material to provide a kind of assured, verifiable, cryptographically verifiable way to conduct transactions. And so that's powerful in a whole bunch of things. It's powerful for bringing more financial market infrastructure online and innovations in the way financial services get built and delivered and rendered. But it's particularly important in this growing world of agentic economic activity. And so right now, what we're seeing is this proliferation in new technology standards for basically payment protocols for AI agents and payment protocols for AI agents that primarily use stablecoins as the actual medium of exchange. If you think about AI agents that are making these high velocity transactions at very low cost to do work or consume data, et cetera, like taking out your Visa card or firing up a bank wire, or it's just completely absurd. And so we need a medium of exchange that can scale down to fractions of a cent, that has the money velocity and speed of the internet, that works openly, globally, interoperably, any software or hardware connected device in the world that may have AI, agentic activity happening on it, being able to transact. And critically, with AI, one of the big concerns is truth, not just hallucinations, but also how do we know who is this AI agent acting on behalf of, and how do I verify that its output and its work is correct? And so what we're really seeing is sort of the next generation of blockchain networks, things like Arc, which Circle's building on, there's other new blockchain networks, are actually being designed specifically for agentic compute. They're designed specifically for the financial and economic activity of a world where 3 years, 5 years from now, one, I think, can reasonably expect that there'll be billions, literally billions of AI agents conducting economic activity in the world continuously on a continuous basis. They need an economic system. They need a financial system. They need a payment system. There is no other alternative, in my view, other than stablecoins to do that right now, and that can keep up with that pace of technological change. And so it's a critical focus for us, but not just us. There's a lot of other folks that are interested in this and contributing to the technical standards to support this upgrade to our digital economic system. So there are a few, I think, key issues here. I think there's the sort of the law and policy issue. There's the actual kind of data about what's here, and then kind of how does this go forward? And I think embedded in all of this is sort of, in my view, sort of taking a first principles approach to how we're designing an internet native financial system, which is sort of how we think about things. So maybe just to touch on each of these. I think the first is we have a law, the Genius Act, in the United States, and we have laws in Europe, MiCA. We have laws in Japan for stablecoins. We now have laws in the UAE, Hong Kong, Singapore imminently, and in many other places. In every single one of these jurisdictions, stablecoins are prohibited from paying interest. That is because stablecoins, payment stablecoins, and in fact, the law in the United States defines a payment stablecoin as a cash instrument that is a payment token that is used as a form of payment and settlement, right? This is the fundamental definition, and I think it's the correct definition, and that's the work of the FSB, that's the work of the G20, that's the work of central bankers who've looked at this and said, we see this as a payment system innovation. This needs to have the safeguards of kind of cash level money. And really that was the regulatory design that came out of a lot of work, 5 years of work. That work went into the development of the stablecoin bill, which eventually became known as the Genius Act in the US. And that is the law. And I think that's very good, and I think that's the right law. Now, there's sort of a second piece, which is, stablecoin issuers such as Circle are prohibited from paying interest. But we generate income. We make money from reserves and other revenue sources, and we build partnerships with lots of companies. We have a partnership with Coinbase. We have partnerships with Binance. We have partnerships with Visa. We have partnerships with so many different companies. And we have economic arrangements with these firms, and they may decide, based on income that they generate from us, that they want to incentivize people to use stablecoins, which are so-called rewards. I think the discussion has been, really banks are not happy that, companies that are involved in promoting the adoption and use of stablecoins are paying rewards. They're saying, hey, isn't this just a way to provide a substitution for a bank deposit? And isn't that going to suck all the deposit base away from banks? It's going to basically undermine the ability for banks to have money to actually have a base in order to give credit. It's going to draw away credit from the real economy. And when we're in a stress condition, the economy is going to implode and we're going to have no credit and it's going to be a huge recession. I mean, that's the kind of reductio ad absurdum kind of logic that flows through.